Hey, this is Zach Log the Great, and I am here tonight with my friend Nate.
It is I.
And we are also joined by pastor and author Frank Luke.
Hello. Hello there.
And you said there was something. There was a story you had published recently that you were going to.
Yeah. A few months ago, I had a story published in Dark Matter in Shoot the Devil 2, Dark Matter. That's a collection of sci-fi stories, all Christian authors. And the something about good overcoming darkness and the demonic in a sci-fi setting. If you read my story there, which is A Ship Without a Sail, you will notice that it is influenced heavily by Star Trek, the original series, although the Allied Earth is much more jingoistic than the Federation. The works of H.P. Lovecraft and X-Men's Brood all mix into that. I have a second story with them under consideration for their next volume. And what makes this story unique among light sci-fi is it's a chaplain story. Instead of it being the captain or the engineer or the science officer who's the focus, we get to see things through the eyes of a chaplain on the ship.
That was actually one of the characters in what was it? Hyperspace Demons. I don't know if you read that one.
Oh yeah, I did.
By Jonathan Moeller. One of the. Anyway, sorry. So I will put a link to that in the show description. I assume there is a link to be provided. And having said that, we are getting together tonight to talk about the poem Ozymandias by Percy Bysshe Shelley, whose middle name you have to pronounce carefully. And before we get to that, I did want to mention, if you like this channel, if you like my work, you would like to support it, you can go to subscribestar.com/Zachlog-the-great and sign up to support my channel. Also, I have a book I am currently publishing serially on a blog. It's called The Mayor of Christ Mountain. It is a story of murder and revenge, very loosely based on the murder of Canon Hinnant. And if that sounds interesting, you can find that at zachlog.wordpress.com. And having said all of this, I will put the poem up on the screen, and Frank has volunteered to read it for us tonight. There we go. Let's see.
Ozymandias.
Okay.
Ozymandias. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well these passions read, which yet survive stamped on these lifeless things. The hand that mocked them and the heart that fed, and on the pedestal these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away."
Okay. And Nate, would you like to get us started with your thoughts on this one tonight?
I'm going to go to a different set of verse, which says, "Though we stack our stones and bury what we can, it all will be undone. Nothing built under the sun will stand against the endless march of sand." Oh, hold on a second. You can still hear me, but I'm not going to have my screen on. I have people moving behind me. So It's one of those interesting poems that just talks about the passage of time and how indomitable that is to all the things we build. I was quoting a band I like. It's called "The Songs of Dust and Nations" by Thrice. But I mean, it's an interesting set of thoughts that, you know, we can do all these monumental things. We can do all this crazy stuff, you know, build a tower to the heavens, but eventually, you know, it will succumb to the tide of time. It will become nothing. You know, nature will, the sand will, and faster than we believe, reclaim all we have done if we let it lapse. And so, you know, it's one of those things, like, be a little humble, guys, because one day somebody's going to walk by and be like, "What are your works, Ozymandias? What are they? A broken statue, and this is some really great sand you did, buddy. Way to go."
Yeah, and it's the this poem is like a masterpiece of irony. And it's just because like that you know, closing stanza, and he's like, "Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair." And when it was built, it's like, hey, you're never gonna build anything like all this awesome stuff I built. I'm awesome, you're not. And then, you know, today, look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. And it doesn't matter how mighty you are, how great your works are. You know, what is there was I remember there was a story I heard a while ago about like some Persian king or something had sent for his counselors, his, you know, his sages and wise men, and he said, "What is one thing that is true in all places and all times? What is one statement that will be true in all places and all times?" And they thought about it, and they, you know, studied, and they, you know, pondered this question for many months, and finally they came back to him and they said, your Majesty, we have concluded that the answer to your question is 4 words: this too shall pass. And, you know, everything we have made, everything we build, is going to come apart. And so it's yeah, it's an excellent reminder of that. How about you, Frank? You read, but you have not yet opined.
Well, I too was struck by the irony of the poem. I mean, we start out, it's a tale within a tale. You know, some unknown person is telling Shelley what he saw far away. Shelley is not even seeing the statue himself. All the works of Ozymandias are gone, except this little plaque that says, "I'm the greatest, hoo." But what remains, you can still tell the sculptor, the unnamed sculptor, his work is still there, broken and in pieces, but it's still there. And something I really loved about this poem is 3 sentences long. The first sentence, it starts from the top and it goes all the way down to "Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair." That is one long sentence, at least in the printing that I had. And then and then "nothing beside remains." One sentence follows that. Huge long sentence, "it's all gone." And then a closing sentence, "round the decay, talking about how, yeah, just reinforcing that nothing beside remains. They're just really
Well, and it's
pushing in on that. It's gone. The irony there.
yeah, and the it does he does okay. He does something here that really good Shakespeare sonnets do. Although this is not a Shakespearean sonnet, the form is not quite the same. But it has that change of perspective, and it does it here with a really solid and sudden punch. Nothing beside remains, and like everything up until then, suddenly like it's like the lights, one set of lights were on in one corner of the room, in one corner of the room, and it looked one way, and suddenly someone hit a switch, those lights went off, another set of lights came on, and it looks entirely different from there. And it's the same room, it's all the same things, but depending on that just shift in perspective, it's impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's so I was talking with another friend of mine about this a while back, and he pointed out that actually apparently this was written kind of in a competition with a friend of Shelley's, because both of them said they said basically we should write a sonnet in we're each going to write a sonnet about this topic. And so there's another Ozymandias poem by Horace Smith, who was a friend of Shelley's. And Shelley won the contest, by the way. Like it's just it wasn't close. Um, but there is another Ozymandias poem of the same theme by Horace Smith, if you're curious.
Behold, my name is Horace Smith. Behold my works and despair.
I'm sitting here going, "Who's Horace Smith?"
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
It's it is. Yeah, it's a little bit like getting into a disc competition with Alexander Pope. Like you're not gonna come out on top of that one. But
I got to admit, this phrase "from an antique land" just irritates me. I'm like, time has passed evenly across the surface of the earth. It's all antique. It's just, have we resurfaced it or not? I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll fully admit some of these antiques have been better used than others, like, but there are mysteries in every corner of the earth. And so this idea that, it's like, oh yeah, he's from an antique land where this lost kingdom of Ozymandias was. And I'm just like, man, come on.
On the other hand, I will say, okay, if by land you literally mean like Earth surface, that's true. If by land you mean country, for instance, the United States, contrary to the way we think of it, contrary to the way most of us Americans think of it, the United States is not old. The United States is pretty darn new, and maybe past its expiration date in its current form. That's a different. Well, actually, no. That's kind of the same discussion, isn't it?
Yeah.
My name is George Washington, and I defeated kings. Behold my works, ye mighty, and aspire. Oh, man. They did parties. I told them as I was leaving, boys, no parties. And look at this.
Wow. Wait. Now I'm thinking if I can get the wording right. I'm just imagining like doing a meme where like George Washington comes back to the house and he's like, I told you kids no parties while I was gone.
They have one where he's leaving. And it's literally what I just said. He's like, and it's like Jefferson and Hamilton or whoever. They're both standing there. He's like, all right, I'm heading out. And remember what I said. No parties. And they look at each other and they're like, yeah. And it's like, ah, dang it.
Okay.
See where we
okay.
end up.
It's been done. So all right, I'll leave that one in probably better hands than mine. But
I remember when I first found out about this poem, I was probably, I guess it would have been about a freshman. In the freshman, sophomore, somewhere around there in high school. And it was kind of coming to me secondhand. It was mentioned in another story.
Wait, so you met a traveler from an antique land who told you?
Yeah. And see, okay, Zachlog, I know you will really appreciate this. In the story, the main character is Satan, and he's trying to he's new in the job. The old Lucifer he defeated the old Lucifer, and so now he's got 30 days to consolidate power in hell before he's tossed out himself.
Is this Piers Anthony?
It is.
Okay.
And I will not touch any of his books since Duan Mode. That just it was just completely disgusting. I will never touch any of his stuff again. But so Satan is trying to consolidate power. Ozymandias is in the Traitor Lake in hell. He brings him up and he makes a deal with him. And Ozymandias says, yeah, I was powerful. I know the secret that you're looking for, but you'll never get it from me. And Satan says, what if I make it so that you are remembered? So that your works are put into poetry and they will last forever. As long as there is literature, your works will be remembered. And Ozymandias takes the deal, gives him the secret, and then Satan goes, and several centuries later, whispers this in Percy Shelley's ear, and Percy Shelley writes a poem about how Ozymandias is not remembered and all his works are gone. And I was reading this again, and my first thought was the Black Rider throws another from his horse.
I don't know if I don't know if you are in on that reference, Nate. That is where I have it. Here it is. Here we go. Are you familiar with this one, Nate?
No.
Okay. Yeah, children's books, epic fantasy, I guess. So yeah, but yeah, and the
Well, made me think. That segment made me think of Arthur, but
yeah, in the second book, there's a character who becomes a traitor, a character who had been working for the good guys, becomes a traitor, sells them out to gain power, and then like
Oh, did I freeze or did everybody else?
it's him.
Okay.
I don't know. You seem fine.
You're back.
On my end.
Yep, you're back.
Oh, okay. Did you hear me? Did my voice go or?
You're froze. You had just said he works for the light and he sells them out, and then
near the end of the book, his boss, the Black Rider, basically flings him aside as no longer useful, and he what happened? Does he like break his neck?
he breaks his back.
Basically, he breaks his back, and he's there dying, and his former master, who was of the on the good guys, basically comes and meets him and comforts him, and tries to tell him, like, basically, I forgive you. But and so the idea is that like once you have served your purpose, if you sell your soul, once you have served your purpose, the outcome for you is not going to be great. And so, and you can see, a number of examples of this in our world. So, but let's see. That actually the context of that in the Piers Anthony story, though, that actually kind of reminds me of something I thought of a while ago. Like, in terms of who you do not want to make angry at you, like, if you make a king angry at you, you might get killed. You might get your family killed. If you make a great poet angry at you, your name may be remembered and mocked for hundreds and hundreds of years. Like, people who got on, people at the time who got on the wrong side of Dante Alighieri, like,
are still remembered.
It's 700 years. Am I right? It's about 700 years now. So,
well, I mean, there's the scene in Knight's Tale where like the pardoner and the summoner are there, and they're giving Chaucer grief, and he's like, you know what? And he tells them, "I was naked for a day. You will be naked for eternity." And they're like, "Yeah, okay, whatever, buddy." But yeah, it kind of gives the background of when he starts writing A Knight's Tale and all of that. And he writes his different Canterbury tales, and he makes these guys like particular bastards in the story. So yeah, you kind of don't want to mess with the guy whose words could potentially echo down the centuries.
But what was
I don't know. I don't feel like there's a lot of. I don't find a lot of extra depth in this poem, except for apparently depths of sand, because it seems very pointed. And hey, I mean, a lot of things are designed to be pointed,
Mm-hmm.
Like a sword.
Unlike a fantasy knife, you add too many points to something, it doesn't get better.
9-bladed swords.
Yeah. But anyway, so I think this is just it's an S-stock kind of poem where it's like, yeah, this is a solid bar that's meant to skewer one thing very, very firmly. And so there you go. It doesn't even have a cutting edge on it. It's just a pointed bar that you go and run them through. And that's it. And that's what this poem kind of reminds me of. It's like, doesn't have a whole lot of other stuff it's trying to do. It's going straight to this one thing.
And it is done very well, very artistically done.
Absolutely.
When you read about the statue of Ozymandias and the arrogance, the sneer, and then it's all gone. He's arrogant because of what he had, and it's gone.
But as we will all see, had is past tense.
Yeah, this is one of those where it's like where once someone has said it right, like it just like no one ever really has to say, like, I mean, this is something people come back to, but at the same time, if nobody ever came back to this subject, you could just point to this poem and like that's it. That's all that had to be said. There is one thing, by the way, which actually, when I was memorizing this, it took me a while to kind of parse this out, and I suspect maybe I was being dense, but I suspect this is something a lot of people stumble on. And so, till that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And it took me a little bit to like mentally rearrange that and get what he was saying. Maybe I was being a bit dense here, but the passions survive. The passions outlived the person who sculpted it, and the heart, the person who it was, a mockery of. The passions outlived them, carved into this lifeless statue. And I kind of feel like that one is that's not quite as bad as Wherefore Art Thou Romeo. It's probably not quite as misread as that one is. That one, by the way, is Why Are You Romeo, not Where. But yeah, it is the poem. The poem is, pretty direct, simple and direct, and it gets to its point, and it does it well. So,
but this actually
now
points to people a lot, because this attitude right here of trying to find purpose in the temporal is incredibly destructive to the mind, because the more you understand, the more you realize that the temporal is shockingly temporal. There's nothing you can do on the, in by our physical media and by our, our natural power that will survive the storms of time and just the long, slow tick of eons. One day, it will be lost. One day it will be forgotten. It's over. It will be destroyed or something. Or the British will find it and stick it in a crate. And so you have to, if you want to make a lasting impact, you have to serve something beyond the temporal. You have to find an eternal purpose. And once you have that, you can know that the things you do and the work of your hands and heart and mind is towards something that will last. So I would suggest, along with my compatriots here, serve the kingdom of God. It is the only kingdom that will never fall. And in so doing, you will do things on earth that are worthwhile, and you will do things in heaven that will echo throughout time and beyond time. And so you won't end up Ozymandias with a buried palace and a shattered effigy. Instead, you will have an everlasting crown that you get to lay down before the greatest of crowns, in memoriam of all the good work you did together. That, I think, is all I have to say.
Well, and another kind of way of doing that terrible thing and summing up the meaning, don't focus on being great, because no matter how great you are, someday all of that is going to be gone. Focus on being good, because if you are good, that's something that matters quite a bit more and will, continue to matter. Or to put it another way, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and rust do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Matthew 6:19-21. So, there is one thing which I hadn't really thought about too much when I was going over this poem, but Frank brought it up, and okay, I met a traveler from an antique land who said, okay, and the first solid line of a 14-line poem, so it's a noticeable percentage, is setting up this kind of frame. It's not him telling us this, it's him telling us what someone else told him. And I do wonder what you could say that second layer adds to the whole thing. Or does it add anything? If he had just told us this himself.
It's another bit of irony. Ozymandias, great king. Woohoo! And now Shelley's writing this poem, but he doesn't even see the statue.
It does put us at one more remove. Yeah, that's true. You're just a little bit farther from actually seeing this, and it's just a little more faded out because you're not even seeing it yourself. So yeah, that makes sense. That works.
Well, here's another bit of this. In addition to, the mighty king being reduced to a curiosity, you'll note this traveler doesn't say he saw it. He just says it's there. He's from if I'm reading this right, he's just from that land. This just could be something he's heard about. He might not have even seen it.
Yeah, I guess
we could be getting this at an even further remove. Whereas, I'm going to tell, he's like, oh, I need this guy to buy me another drink. I'm going to start telling him about that thing my uncle always talks about the big legs. Crazy Uncle Horeb. He's a weird guy, but people sure do like that story here in these newfangled territories.
I did also think of something, the Gilgamesh epic. Gilgamesh's quest for immortality, and then he gives up and he goes back to the city of Uruk, which historically we do have enough evidence that there was a King Gilgamesh, and he built the walls of Uruk. And around 2700 BC seems to be the time frame. And in the poem, as he's going back to Uruk, he sees it and he says to his ferryman, "That's why I will be remembered. I will be remembered for the city walls. That is the work of my hands." And that city stood continually occupied from 2700 BC to AD 700. That is amazing to me.
Yeah. Uruk, is that at all related to where where Abraham, he was from the land of Ur.
Ur of the Chaldees.
Is that are those connected, or
well, they share the same root, but they're not the same city.
Okay.
I don't believe.
Okay.
In Abraham's day, which he would have been after Gilgamesh, but Ur was a major metropolis of the day, and Uruk would have been also well occupied.
Okay, but those two are not connected. That UR is just coincidence in this case. Okay.
From the same language. I did read once about what Ur would have been like in Abraham's day from archaeology. It was quite the party city from what they've discovered. And Abraham getting out of there was a good thing for religions that came after him.
So it was so him leaving there was Lot 1.0.
Yeah. He left Ur, and in its region, it would have been like the Vegas or the LA of our day.
Although he what is it? Although it went noticeably better for Abraham after he left there than it did for Lot after he left Sodom. So,
well, Abraham chose to leave at God's urging. Lot did not. Lot had to be pulled out.
Yeah, yeah, God said basically, Abraham, let's go. I'm gonna do something, and Abraham said, okay, well, I'm up for this. And with Lot, God said, uh, by the way, if you don't want to be a crispy critter, let's go. So yeah, that was a different set of circumstances, which might you could say account for the different outcomes on those two sides. Lot's story does not get better from there.
No.
If you're not familiar with the book of Genesis, it's unfortunate. Um,
It gets a
the
lot worse. Bye-bye.
Yep.
and his wife was kind of salty about them leaving too.
Oh, God. Forgive us for the puns.
All right. Well, Nate, you said you pretty much have what you wanted to say already on record.
Yep.
Frank, how about you? Any last thoughts about the poem tonight? Then.
Yes, one thing we haven't mentioned is that Ozymandias was the Greek name of Ramesses II.
Yes, this was from a real Egyptian king. What were the dates? Because I was looking at this earlier this afternoon. It was I think it was Ramses II, Ramses II. Oh, I was placing it farther back, about 1200 BC.
I should have remembered that.
But so yes, this was also to some degree based on a real person who, presumably Egypt was at the time the place, one of the greatest nations in in the western side of the world, at least.
Mm-hmm.
And he was king, so presumably he was a pretty big deal for a while. And now almost anyone who's heard of him only hears of him because of this. So yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I think I've pretty much said most of what I have on this one. So, thank you both for joining me. And anyone out there listening, thank you for joining us tonight. And God be with you.
Also with you.